Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Night shift workers of Reddit, what's the creepiest thing that's happened to you while on the job? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Paramedic here. I work in Las Vegas, night shift. I used to sit on a busy part of Fremont Street, close bathrooms, well lit, and one night I see this gangly guy in a trench coat with half a gallon of Fireball. Walks past screaming at people and disappears. A few minutes later he came back but running, like he was running from something, screaming that he was a ninja and ducking behind cars as he went. Snuck up on me and in front of like 100 people pulls a giant serrated curvy knife out and starts screaming at me. I backed away without him doing anything, but what really gets me is that 100 people walked by without doing anything. I'm a travel RN. Did a stint in Warren, Pennsylvania, worked on a cardiac floor but got pulled down to the CCU, critical care unit, and patient kept saying she saw dark figures in her room, standing behind the door and staring at her from the corner. I assured her no one was there. She was probably dreaming. She said bullshit, and I told her, well, next time she sees them, ring her bell. About an hour goes by, and I hear her yell, and then her bell comes on. I walk to the room, and right before I get there, I hear the bathroom door shut. Thinking the patient is in the bathroom, I walk in and she's in bed, and she looks at me and calmly says, "She's in the bathroom." I open the door, no one there. Odd, but still, I didn't think much of it. Patient wasn't confused or any mind-altering meds. She insisted a nurse kept coming in and just standing there in the dark and staring at her. It was literally just me and another nurse working this small 6-bed unit. I thought it was weird, but forgot about it, and then a few months later, I get pulled down to that unit again. Middle of the night, patient in the same room rings his bell. I go in and he says, "What's up with the nurse that keeps coming in and just standing there? Who is she?" My heart sank and started pounding. It was the same room, same story, months apart. Insane. Got to talking to other nurses, and they said that unit is death haunted. So, I work as a baker for a small bakery in a tourist town. I'm regularly at work around midnight most nights. I'm pretty close to the local strip of bars and clubs, so I hear late night partygoers quite often. Sirens a few times a night, people yelling, that kind of stuff. The weirdest though, which started out creepy but didn't end that way, was when I opened the door around 4 a.m. to someone knocking. The only reason I opened the door is because my boss had literally just texted me saying we might be getting an early delivery. So I thought it was just them. I opened the door and no one's there. I glanced around thinking they knocked and ran back to the truck to start unloading, which is common, and then suddenly, someone steps out of the shadows looking like effing Slender Man. I panic, but hold it together pretty well, and once they got out of the shadows, it obviously wasn't Slender Man. It was just a tall, skinny girl, with no pants on, or shoes, and a shirt that obviously wasn't hers. This poor girl then asks if she can borrow a phone. It clicks in my mind what could have happened and I tell her to come in. I let her use my phone. She tries to call her boyfriend and tells me that essentially she came to after passing out. I didn't know where she was and I was the only light on the street. I didn't ask what happened to her, but she was saying something about pulling a fire alarm earlier. Drunk people, am I right? And she was hyperventilating over the cops being called on her, so I didn't call them. Her boyfriend never answered the phone, but I helped her figure out where her hotel was, and lucky it was on the same block we were already on. I couldn't leave to walk with her or drive because I had a million things in the ovens, but I actually gave her my phone with the place pulled up on Google Maps and the flashlight on, and she walked there. Made it back okay, showered and took a nap, and brought me back my phone later in the morning. She hugged me twice and thanked me profusely, and I'm just sitting there like, damn. Didn't think I was getting that phone back, but glad it worked out okay. I don't know if she was sexually assaulted or just the type to strip when drunk or what, but she seemed okay after having been back to her hotel room. It could have gone a lot worse for her, so I'm glad I was the door she knocked on, but God F, did she give me a heart attack at first.
Regardless of the circumstance, you did a great thing for a stranger, and that can definitely restore your faith in humanity. I had a similar thing happen to me where a woman asked me to give her $20 to take a cab home and she'd bring it back to me tomorrow. Never saw her again.
Was a maintenance tech at a factory that everyone swore was haunted. came in on a Saturday, and it was me and 3 other guys. I went to get my toolbox and looked out to the warehouse, which had the automatic lights in it. All the lights started clicking on in a line. I thought maybe the owner stopped in, as that wasn't uncommon. When they started clicking on, coming the direction of me, with no one there, is when I noped the F on out of there. I used to be one of the nighttime duty managers at a hotel. The hotel consists of the main house, which was built in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the old house, which was built in the 14th century. There are a few spooky stories about the old house and the grounds, which all come from actual events. At one point, it was listed as the 3rd most haunted building in Britain. I wouldn't say that I was a believer or a denier of ghost stories. I thought some events can be explained and some can't. Being a local, I was familiar with all the stories, and my dad had worked there for years when I started. Like I say, wasn't a believer and wasn't a denier. That was until I became a duty manager. Being a duty manager is a simple enough role, dealing with complaints from hotel guests, handing over to the next duty manager, etc. One of my duties as a nighttime duty manager was to lock up areas of both parts of the hotel, places like the bar, restaurant, and gift shop. Other things, such as making sure that the fire doors are closed, that emergency lighting is working, and closing and locking windows for security. This part of the job was extensive. Every window, fire door, and emergency lighting, I had to check this every single night. Now, the old house is where all the spooky stuff happens. In the old house is a chapel, pretty standard for a house of that size and age in Britain. This is where I experienced the first spooky thing. There is this one window in the chapel that no matter how many times you close and lock that window, the next time you walk past, it'll be open again. This was experienced by myself, the other duty managers, and even the security guards. Nothing horrifying, but it gets worse. The next spot is a set of stairs called the Jerusalem staircase, named so as the wood for the stairs comes from Jerusalem. Some stories about a ghost dog on these stairs that trips people up. I don't think anything of this. It's stairs. People trip on stairs all the time. However, they lead to a room called the Long Gallery. Now, this is a very long room, close to 100 meters. Other than the length, there is nothing else to the room. I was doing my rounds one night, had come in to do my checks as normal, when suddenly I can hear heavy footsteps coming from the other side of the room, which is possible. There are guest rooms at the other end. I shine my torch down the room and can see nothing. Then it gets scary. The footsteps slowly become harder and faster until they sound like someone sprinting towards me. I'm frozen. Next thing I know, whack! I've been shoved against the wall with pain in my back, stomach, and chest like I've been tackled. There's a similar room directly above, but that is only accessible to duty managers and security. Again, not the only person to experience this. The last coup relate to a confirmed murder in the house. It's a long story, so I'll give them the TLDR. Lord of the house and his wife are expecting a baby. Lord has heard a rumor that wife has had an affair, had a local nurse abducted and brought to the house to deliver the baby. Baby then snatched by the Lord and thrown into the fireplace and murdered his wife. Nurse escapes and curses the family, saying no male heir will be born to the family. The curse kinda came true. No male heir has survived long after birth. Now, the bedroom where these events took place is a popular part of the old house, with guests visiting all the time. However, it's not the real room. That's directly above. I've been in the room more times than I can count. Reports of a crying baby are common but never proved. One thing never reported was blood dripping from the ceiling. As mentioned, the real bedroom is directly above, so myself and security investigated. We found nothing. Nobody. Not even a drop of blood. The second part is about a sculpture in the chapel of one of the male heirs that died shortly after birth as a result of the curse. The sculpture is pretty normal looking, baby in cloth with his eyes closed. Apart from one night the eyes were open. I ran so fast out of the chapel, I'm pretty sure I broke the land speed record. So there's my experiences. The hotel, if you're interested, is called Little Coat House Hotel. There was an older hospital that had a unit blocked off, abandoned, or future repairs. It was an adolescent unit. It was always pitch black. No lights worked, and it still had hospital equipment and children's toys. Back in my security guard days, on the rare occasion, I'd be sent to this hospital to conduct an interior and exterior patrol. It would always be at the worst hours ever, usually around 2 to 4 a.m. Patrolling the hospital overall wasn't bad. It was like any other hospital, but it was mandatory that I patrolled the creepy unit. I'm already on edge because it's early in the AM, and naturally, my mind was already playing tricks with me. I grabbed my flashlight and began walking the unit. Upon entering, I hear whispering, a man's voice, whispering. I couldn't make out what was being said, but it instantly sent chills down my spine. I have a hard time believing in the paranormal, and I had a hard time believing this was my mind effing with me. I was getting uneasy and wanted to turn back around, but I'm the security guard. It's my job. I start to approach the nursing station, and that's when the whispers got louder. I flashed the light in every direction. My eyes suddenly met with a frail, elderly man in a blue hospital gown. He was hunched over and sitting underneath a desk. It was a patient with dementia. I don't know how they got access to the unit, and I didn't know how long they were gone for. I didn't ask questions. I let the nurses know, walked the patient back to the proper unit, and quit night shifts after that. Not me, but my uncle used to operate a movie theater in the 80s. After the midnight show, he would shut off the projector, take the day's collection in a bag, lock the theater, and walk home. Midnight show usually ends around 2 a.m., and the streets are completely empty during that time. The road to his house is a narrow, unpaved one, barely one car can fit. As he reached that road, he saw a little girl around 12 years old standing there with an expressionless face. My uncle asked, "Why you here, kid? What's your home? I'll walk you home." The kid kept giving him a creepy death stare and wasn't saying a word. After a while, my uncle stopped trying to get her to talk and decided to walk home. He started walking, and after a while he turned back and the kid was gone. Suddenly he felt a weight on his shoulder, as if someone heavy was sitting on his shoulder. He fell to the ground, losing his balance because of the weight. He managed to get up and looked around, but no one was seen. He got up and ran home. He still doesn't have an explanation as to what had happened. He said the weight he felt was heavier than a 12-year-old girl. I did overnight shifts at a hotel, checking folks in and out and doing the daily audit. I was about 4 months pregnant with a doomed pregnancy and looked about 7 months pregnant. It was very obvious. About 2 a.m., this guy comes in. I can still see him if I think about it, and it has been years. Teardrop tattoo under his left eye, one gold tooth. He was wearing a wife beater with button-down shirt over it and jeans. He asked for a room and I started going through the normal questions. He suddenly reached across the counter and grabbed my right boob and squeezed it. I took a step back and put my hands up in defense, and he smacked my hands away. I told him I was calling the cops, and he made a move to jump over the counter. I ran into the office and locked the door. The cops came, but by the time they got there, he was already gone. There was no video of it because the VHS tape ran out of every night around midnight, and I wasn't allowed to put in another until 5 a.m. Tells you how long ago it was. Dumbass left his wallet, and he didn't live far away. He stayed in jail for a while. Never went to trial though, because my husband at the time found him and beat the absolute hell out of him. Put him in the hospital, as I recall. That was my last night working overnight at a hotel.
I have to say, in this instance, good for your husband. I mean, it was a different time back then. Now everyone's so serious.
I work at a port down in Florida. We keep monstrous plates of aluminum in the back lot. There are ponds everywhere. Generally, we work in threes. It usually takes 2 or more to do the work and a third for safety watch. One night, we're using heavy equipment to move some of these plates to fab, and our safety watch goes sprinting past us. We're in huge forklifts. It's pretty dark except for what's directly in our lights. 30 to 45 seconds later, over the radio, we hear this guy screaming, "Don't get out to strap the load. There's a 12-foot gator chasing me." Sure as shit, here comes a gator just walking across the lot. He's been camped out under one of the loads, and when this dude checked the straps before we moved, this thing came hauling out after him. Needless to say, we no longer moved supplies at night in the back lot. It would have taken 3 to 5 minutes before we knew that he was missing. Doctor here from Mexico. All of this happened while I was an intern right when I finished college. So one day, this woman is admitted in the ER with her right arm totally shattered with AR-15 rounds and a giant effing plastic bag full of cash, dollars, and she wouldn't let go of it. The hospital director had to come from her house to sign for the bag and put it in the hospital safe so she could go into surgery to reconstruct her arm. Turns out she was a nanny for a local narco big shot, and the entire family was gunned down, even the kid, only she survived. So, she makes it out of the OR alive, and she was taken to her room. The entire hospital was full of the army because they got a tip that the cartel wanted to kill the only witness. This is where it gets creepy. I got out of surgery and went to the staff parking lot to have a smoke, and this guy on a motocross bike comes in at full speed into the patio where the boiler room is. I thought that it was just someone looking for family or something like that, and went to look for him. And in that moment, he comes back on the bike at full speed at the end of the hallway and pulls out a machine gun and comes straight forward at me. The hospital rooms were right behind the door on my back. I turn around and run inside to lock the door, but at the time, some soldiers come out of nowhere, and the cartel soldier tries to escape through the parking lot, and he was gunned down by a Hummer with a 50 cal mounted on its right in front of me, ripped in half. The woman lived.
So hopefully the nanny got that bag of cash as severance. I mean, terrible what happened to the family, especially the children, but he gets shot from an AR a few times. Might deserve it.
I once worked third shift at a home for the developmentally disabled. Our state hospital had shut down and left a bunch of families with nowhere to place their developmentally disabled family members, who were in need of more care than the families could provide. One such parent founded and built a series of homes for this population, and it became a successful option for these families and their loved ones. The homes were set up with 4 bedrooms, a bathroom, laundry room, and kitchen on both sides, with an enormous pantry connecting the two. On each side there was a front door, parking lot, and a sliding glass door leading out to a patio and generous fenced-in backyard. Each night, there was one person assigned to each side of the home, and when we arrived to work for night shift, the residents of these homes were usually already asleep. It was our job to check on them at intervals and do prep work for meals and such for first shift. One night in particular, I was working opposite a guy I'd just met, but he was pretty great, and I felt immediately comfortable with him. I was in the kitchen after making food for the next day and was cleaning out the fridge of food that was over 3 days old, when I got the intense feeling of being watched from behind. I turned around toward the scallop window in the door and saw the face of a young girl who was clearly developmentally disabled in the window. It startled me, especially since she wasn't one of our residents. She looked distraught, and as I was moving toward her and making eye contact, she disappeared. There one moment, then just gone. I was understandably pretty freaked out. I went through the pantry to the opposite side of the house to tell my coworker what had just happened, and I described her in great detail. As I did so, his face just went white, and he ran off to another room and came back with a photo album. He opened it to a certain page and sat it down on the counter, and there she was, the girl. I said, "Oh my God, that's her," and pointed to her face in the picture. He then had a pretty big freak out and said we were doing everything together for the rest of the night, because I just pointed to a former resident who had died in the parking lot. She'd had an emergency and an ambulance had been called, but they hadn't even made it out of the parking lot before she passed away. Now, I try to find reasonable, rational explanations for things like this, but I'm not ashamed to say that my blood ran cold right then, and we did, in fact, do everything together for the remainder of that night. I used to work at a bar. By law, alcohol serving establishments must close at 2 a.m. Depending on how much work needed to be done, it would take me an hour or so to clean up, count cash, and file paperwork. One night I was in the bathroom browsing Reddit, and I heard some people in the bar talking. I figure I'd accidentally left the door unlocked, so I finished up and went to usher some lost souls out into the street. There was nobody in the bar. I checked outside to make sure no one was shitting on the front deck. It happens, but no one was there. While I was outside, I heard people chatting in the bar again. I went back inside, and of course, there was no one there. I was creeped out, but I finished out the night and went home. Here's where things take a turn. There was a restaurant attached to the bar, and they closed around 11 p.m. One night, one of the cooks described hearing people chatting while he was cleaning and taking the trash out. He went to the back to check it out, but no one was there. When he got back to the back, he heard the chatter from behind him in the lobby area. He went to the lobby, but no one was there. This has happened to a handful of people in both establishments.